Welcome to Electrify, the video show and podcast for electricians only, with your hosts Paul Abernathy and Jay the Basement King Grunberg. Sit back and enjoy the show. What up, everybody? Welcome to another residential wiring commentary episode here on Electrify, part of Electrician Live Broadcast Network. My name is Paul Abernathy, one of your hosts for this series, and with me, as always, my cohort in crime, all the way out in Colorado, near the Dragon Man, Mr. Jay Grunberg.
Hey, what's up? What's up? Happy Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. Only reason I know it's Tuesday night is because exam prep night's Wednesday night, so it's Tuesday night. So.
Right. A little north of the Dragon Man. He's about 60 minutes south of here. He's, I think, more located in the Colorado Springs area. I'm further south of here, though.
I've seen you drive. It's not very. It's not very far with the way you drive. I've seen it. I've seen the videos. You know, just
it's funny.
care to the wind when you drive. You just go. I've seen it.
I'm surprised. What's up, guys, man? Thanks for joining us. Jason, John, Matty Ice, Adam, Joe, thanks for joining us. Hey, today on my drive to the basement, I walked this morning in Erie, which is 60 minutes north. There's about 60 miles.
It's nothing for you. Nothing for you to travel that mile.
I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over because, I mean, I'm probably going about 85 on the highway, which I think it's about 75, or keeping up with traffic, whatever, but I'm passing people. Mm-hmm. And I don't even blink, and I look over to the right, and there's two cops, and I'm just like, just keep cruising, I don't know if they didn't see me or they just didn't care.
You just look out the windows, what's up, bro?
I was like, okay, and I go about a couple minutes, and I look in my rear view a couple seconds. I'm waiting for the lights to go on, and no lights. I'm just like, just kept going.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, getting Adam's question about the CMECP. First of all, CMECP, folks, you've heard me talk about it. CMECP, Certified Master Electrical Professional. Adam, you have to be a master electrician or equivalent. What's equivalent mean? People ask. That means if you're in a state which does not have a master's license, I guess Colorado would be one. Do y'all have a master's?
I am a master, bro. Come on.
Oh, you are? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Since you're not really in the program, so that's why I forgot. So if you're in a state like, for example, Ohio, they have electrical contractors license, and then they have the journeymans or whatnot, or however they do it. So electrical contractor would be equivalent to a master. But if you're in a state that has master, then you got to be a master. Now, we do have an apprenticeship program that allows people, many people don't know about this. It allows you to get into the apprenticeship program, but you have to obtain your master's by the end of the program, in the end of the year. So if you go into that one, you have to be a master at the end of the year. If you go one day over the year and you haven't obtained your master license by then everything is for naught and you get nothing. So there is caveats to it. So can you be in the program? Now, the Fast Tracks Black is exam prep driven. It's not the same as the CMECP program. So no, you can't do the CMECP using the Black. You have a different course that you'd have to get for the CMECP. Can you do them at the same time? Sure. But are they two different things? Absolutely. So keep that in mind. You can't use the Black course to try to do because the grading is different. The thresholds are different. All the exams that you're required to, everything's different. You're held to a higher level, that type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference, okay? So, yeah. So you could get it if you were a journeyman. You could get into the apprentice program. Go check it out on our website, mycmecp.com. It should be down at the bottom. It'll tell you about the apprenticeship program. But the key is, once you enroll, you're going to have to be a master by the end of the year. And if you're not, you don't get nothing. All right. So, again, we're strict like that. Okay, but that's a new program.
Adam, I got mine too.
Yeah.
I still keep it. Even though I have a master's in a contractor's, I still keep my journeyman. This was the first license. Just so you guys know, I never got a residential wireman's license. And here in the state of Colorado, that's just 2 years. You don't need any schooling. It's just 2 years of on-the-job training of residential. I was a commercial electrician. For those who didn't know, the Izzy's out there, is I did 4 years commercial, and I did 4 years of schooling, and I got my journeyman's first. Then I got my master's, contractors, and then I worked in residential. So I was one of those guys that came from the commercial side into the residential. And believe me, I learned the hard way on a lot of that stuff.
Guess what?
So.
Guess what, Jay?
What's up?
Even those whack jobs or jacker whacks or whatever you call them that say that you have to have a strap within 3 feet of the EMT, I guess if you use a chase nipple between two enclosures, he wants a strap on that because...
Oh, no.
If it's 18 inches, 12 inches, 6 inches, 4 inches, 2 inches, they want a strap on it. Boy, jacker, jack whacker, whack jacker, whatever your name is, you whack jacker. That's what you are. Okay, so... All right, so let's get into tonight's topic. I should just say wannabe because that's all he wants to be. Wants to be, but all right. So we're gonna get into tonight's episode. So a special bonus for you folks. So most of you know the residential series that we did nine episodes of that. Dude, do me a favor. I talked to a couple guys the other night who said they love the series. People love it. We love doing these commentaries, so we're going to do a bunch more, and we're going to search for good topics. But I found that there was our resident, how should we say it? Our resident online electrician that we're using for this series actually had another video, and I don't know if it pertains to the one in the last video where the panel was at that awkward location. I don't think it, but it's the same concept, because obviously if he was in the 2020 edition, he needed an exterior emergency disconnect. So this one is a meter, Jay, and a server outside. So everything's outside. So whether that's the one that's going to wherever that other one was, it doesn't matter because you can imagine that it would be, because this is a good one of example where he would have, putting an outside service as well as the meter. And we will elaborate on it as if it was the 2020 NEC where necessary and just kind of go from there. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Belize. Yeah. We got Belize in the house. People, it's international, bro. There's people from all over the world. And he's over on Twitch. Hey, if you've never watched over on Twitch, I'm not a gamer, right? I do Call of Duty. We like to call it COD. You know what I'm saying? Us that are in the gaming, us in the gaming world, us gamers, God. But at the end of the day, I suck at that thing. So that's why I can't get attached to it, because I'm like, I suck at it. But dude, more people liking the stream. Thank you. All right. So let's go and get into tonight's topic.
Get into it, man.
But Twitch has a great streaming platform. I mean, it's really high quality stream. Surprise. The Basement, he never left. The Basement King never left. I wouldn't get rid of the Basement King. What? All right. Are you ready?
I'm back. Back again. Tell your friends.
The king is back. Back again.
Back. Na-na-na-na. I don't know. Can't listen to that song for a while, but...
All right. Anyway. Okay. All right. Let's go. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah. Let's get at it. Let's get after it.
All right. Let's get after him. I love his shoes. Check out them shoes. Definitely. He heard the OSHA warning and they said, get red shoes. All right, so he's got them.
Okay, today we are doing a 200 amp service with a main breaker disconnect, and it all starts with the drilling. I have a 2 1/4 inch bit right now, just drilling the holes for where my service wire is going to go. And I know that a lot of these videos are supposed to be shorter for your entertainment, but there's a lot of real work that goes into what we do. And like this wire is heavy as shit. Look at me tote that thing upstairs like a champ. I'm rolling that thing out. Like, it's heavy. Like, it's no joke. Like,
he's a beast.
I'm not getting paid a lot to do this, but
what? You know you're a baller.
I want to show you exactly what we do day in, day out. It's not all sunshine and roses. So here I am shoving it through a top plate at first. I figured getting it to the panel and then running the rest of the wire the other way would be easy. So now I drilled some 2-inch holes through these TGIs, and I'm just trying to fish it through. I opted to notch out the panel because I thought it would be easier.
Hey Jay, I think this is that panel that he did in the first couple episodes. Remember when he put that one in? I think this is that one, and he's in that garage where he was doing the home runs. So this is part of that one.
Yeah, the meter's on the back, on the outside of that garage.
It's not on the other side of this wall. It's why he's running this long SCR that he had to roll out. So the meter's on the other side of the house. So
right. It is on the other side.
Yeah. So, and I think that the last one that we saw, not the last one, but like the second or third in this series, was this panel that he was cutting in, because he shows all those home runs going through there. So he's jumped around a little bit, but I mean, it makes sense. He's trying to put together, but we wanted this video just for a specific reason, to show exterior and application, kind of wrap up all the stuff that we've done up to this point, that type of thing. So
I'm going to put this 18-inch nail guard above the panel anyways later on, and instead of going through a 2-inch hole, I thought it would be a little bit smoother. So I'm putting it in the panel right now, and it looks like a lot of wire in the panel, and that's because the ground wire has to go a lot lower. Where I put the ground bar kit is way on the bottom left, and then I'll trim the hots and the neutral a little shorter. So now I'm upstairs again and just trying to fish it to the other side of the house. Like, this is a long wire. I think this one measured out to be about 92 feet. It's a 2-story monster bitch ass house, and it just takes time. Look at me struggle right there. That's a big strong man. So it is definitely not easy work. I did have help with me, but I wanted to make this video and show that you can do it by yourself. You know, just gotta have a little tenacity. So remember them holes I drilled. We got to get this service wire down before we can start working on the meter. And I could have just...
All right, so a couple thoughts. So just so we can keep the context, service wire, this is obviously a feeder, right? So just for context for everybody, to make sure that everybody doesn't get lost in some of the terminology that he'll use, this is a feeder, obviously, because he's running an SCR and he's taking it outside. And he also said it was 92 feet. So a lot of people will say, well, what about voltage drop? What about voltage drop? Okay, so it is 240, obviously. And at the end of the day, voltage drop is not a requirement. So it's a recommendation in the code, unless you're doing fire pumps or sensitive electronic equipment. So he's going to do him, that type of thing. But just wanted to make sure everybody was clear that this is SCR. So this is a feeder. It's still so for clarity, this is still service entrance cable. It's just the SER being utilized as a feeder, right? So I just wanted to make it clear, because he said service wire, because technically he's right, but it's being utilized as a feeder. So I just, making that stuff up. Just so we're all clear. Okay.
Cut all this out and started where the wire was hanging out. I could have just started where the wire was just hanging outside of the house, but you'd miss all this hard work that you have to do to get that wire there sometimes. And I have tried to make this video a few times, but I'm always missing like a piece, like a stupid piece or something. But
he shouldn't worry about that. All you should do is do it. We'll take care of all this stuff and correct him. So he shouldn't have to worry about that.
I think the whole project took me like 1 hour and 15 minutes to do, and I cut this video down to 35 minutes. So I'm trying to make it as entertaining as possible. And right here, when I drilled the downstairs too, I was able to get it through this bottom plate and through the top plate downstairs. Like, I was able to see it and fish it through. So now I'm just putting some service staples in. And you have to have one within 12 inches of the top plate and every 4 feet down, and one within 12 inches of the bottom plate.
Okay, he makes that statement a lot, and he's inconsistent, right? But that's not accurate, right? So interesting enough, Jay, and you know this, in 338, which is for service entrance conductors and things like that, there is no dot 30, so that's interesting. We tell people to always remember dot 30 securing and supporting. Well, ultimately, it sends you back to part 2 in 334 for non-metallic sheath cable. So you're going to secure this every 4.5 feet, but he does it every 4. He's okay. Not wrong. He's fine. He has to do it every 4.5 feet, or he could do it every foot if he want, every 2 foot, whatever he wants to do. So that's fine. But there is no rule about within 12 inches of a top plate and the bottom plate, right? So it's still every 4.5 feet. Now it is still going to be within 12 inches of terminating in the cabinet, that type of thing. But other than that, it's still the normal 4.5 feet like you would for a non-metallic sheath cable, right? Also, I'll mention that he's putting those that looks pretty darn big size SER. So he's putting it on parallel with those framing members. Remember that you still have to meet the rules in 300.4, especially if he's running parallel. It must stay 1.25 inches away from the edge of the framing member. And that counts to both sides of the framing member. So when you guys are doing that, take that into consideration, because it could ultimately be an issue where you're going to have to put nail guards down it or something, because you can't get 1.25 inches away. Any thoughts on that, Jay?
No, I think everything that you're saying is perfect. I know that's why sometimes going down parallel with the framing member, we use the stackers, because they kind of stack off the framing members, so we can kind of get away with it not being that 1.25 inches, the stacks off. But with this SCR, or with the big thickness of that SCR, I think you have to use a staple to get it right to it. So yeah, you're right. You got to be careful on that.
Yeah, be careful, because if you measure the edge of that cable to the edge of that framing member and it's less than 1.25 inches, then he's going to have to put a nail plate, a 1/16 inch nail plate, all the way down, a full runner. Or you get around that by moving it. Now, see, he's got those cross beams that are designed because of the OSB. So somebody asked me, could he have come over and then maybe go to the middle and him staple it against those? And my answer to that would be yes. And if he did that, then he doesn't have to worry about the 1.25 inch edge of the stud. So,
right,
you just have to, you know what I mean? You just have to think about things, and so you have to look at it. I mean, that's why that's why we get the big bucks, right? Because we have to look at it, it's that type of thing. So, all right, we're giving you all this content, okay? Thoughts and opinions. We're opinionated. There we go.
Same thing right here where it's going out. Oh no, wait, this is second story still. So 12 inches top plate, 4 foot down, and 12 inches from the bottom plate.
All right, so now when he is nailing to that,
this is where I'm going to put it out. It's right there at my stomach level, kind of. And I'm cutting this wire. It's aluminum 4.0, and it's rated for 200 amp service.
All right, let's talk about that. So it is rated, it is used widely for 200 amp service. It's actually 4/0 rated for 180 amps. So even if you weren't using the 83% rule, which you probably can, I'm sure that panels are handling 100% of the load. I'm sure that feeder is handling 100% of the load. I don't know what's outside yet. But if your 310.12 applies, then 4/0's perfectly fine, as long as he has no conditions of use, adjustment, or corrections. But he is going through the attic, so if you have insulation up there, it could change the condition of use. We obviously know there's insulation up there. But the other thing is, if you're not using 310.12 or 310.15 B7 in the 2017 code, you still can use 4/0 aluminum at 180 amps and put it on a 200, as long as your calculated load doesn't exceed 180 amps, because that's what the amp rating is of a 4/0 under the normal ampacity table in 310.16. So I think a lot of people forget that, Jay. They know the 83% rule, but then they go, well, I did a load calc, it was only 150 amps. Well, you're still okay with a 180 amp rated wire on a 200 amp breaker. We have the rules in the code that allow us to do that. But you have to do a load calc to know this. And I know that all of my students in a Fast Tracks program all know how to do a load calc. So I have no fear from that. But, all right, and let's keep on getting it here. All right, breaking it all out.
So the trick with building a meter for me is laying out everything first, just to make sure, because there's a whole bunch of different meters, and that's why they give you different options for different 2-inch, for different knockouts on each side. It's just depending on whatever electrical company that you're using or wherever you're getting your meters from. So these are just the screws for the
Upset about bots and competitors clicking on your ad? Why me? Why me?
I don't know.
disconnect.
It's okay, girl.
I'm just putting them in so I don't lose them. Gonna have a lot of parts and a lot of pieces everywhere, and I don't want to lose these ones.
It's over there. Why?
So after a while of doing this, you'll be able to start to see where 2 inches are, and that's what I'm using for most of this. Right there, what I'm taking out is the space for the 2-inch Romex connector. And I just take out the middle piece, and you can just start rocking it side by side until it breaks loose for the size that you need. It's kind of a bitch sometimes, just depends on what company you're using. Sometimes whenever they come from the factory, the knockouts aren't like fully cut out, and it can be really tough.
A little tip: I'm using it's not really a quote Romex connector, so using an SE cable clamp. There's two different types. Obviously, one's designed for SER, and one it's designed for SEU. Don't grab the SEU one and try to use it on an SER. Okay, the ones that are made for SEU have the bottom, where we say the smiley face plate, versus the one that's kind of, looks like a Tic Tac or something. I don't know, so you can tell the difference, but make sure you get the one that's for the type of cable you're using. Oval, maybe like an oval. Did I say TikTok or Tic Tac?
Tic Tac.
That's good. Tic Tac. That's what I wanted to say. You know what? I'm obsessed with Jay's TikTok. I mean, that's what it is. The Basement King is all over TikTok. So,
Speaking of that, I gotta post a couple more tonight. So stay tuned.
TikTok's coming from the Basement King.
And it just takes practice. It can be really tough at first, just to get it done, but with a little practice, it gets easier.
Well, it doesn't take a whole lot. It doesn't take a whole lot, Jay, because I think on that one he took out all the rings anyway. So just knock them out.
All right, same thing with here. The power company always gets the most direct pathway to their lugs. Like, you don't want to take out the other. Like, I'm taking out this one because it's right below where their lugs are, where they're going to be plugging up for power.
Makes sense.
And don't forget your 1/2 inch. That's going to be for your ground rod, for your 4/7 to your ground rod. And this will be to the disconnect. And I see a lot of people do this differently, but I found...
Remember, folks, there's probably a little hole knockout that you knock out for your grounding electrode conductor to go out. In his case, this is what he's talking about. And he knocked out a 1/2 inch, right? If you knock out that 1/2 inch and you run he said a 4, but it could be a 6, but we'll talk about that. You run it through that, then you run the risk of creating a an arc or an inductive choke across it. It's not in contact. So you really should use a little hole that they provide you. It's built into it. If you're going to use the a half inch, my recommendation was, even though some people might frown on it, is use a connector, even if it's a non-metallic connector, which I mean, not a non-metallic, an NMB metal connector. They have what's called a Kinney clamp. They want to make you think that that's a requirement. It's not, but it is probably the best course of action in order to reduce some type of inductive choke at that point where it leaves. But just remember, usually there's a little button knockout there that's just for that, but he just went straight for the half-inch knockout. So
that, just taking out the middle piece and finding where you need to be and rocking out that piece just like that, just popping it out. It's a lot easier for me to do it this way.
Adam says, why didn't you use a meter main? Because it might not be what they use in that area. So in my area where I was at in Virginia, we never used meter mains. In fact, our meters were given to us by the power company. So if they're going to give it to me, I ain't paying for it. So all I got to do is buy the disconnect. So they, that type of thing. And, right. So, and for me, this is how I've always done them. Just separate meter, separate service disconnect. And everywhere is different. Jay, what do y'all do? Y'all do the combos, don't you?
It's just situational. If I can fit a combo there and it makes sense, then I'll do it. If it's a situation where I can't and I have to do a meter and then, just nipple over to a service disconnect, I'll do that as well. In this guy's case, though, as he said before, he's probably installing what the builder's providing. And this is probably what they provide on all these homes. This is what's on the plans. Because even though we don't get too many plans for residential buildings, when you're doing a big development like this, they usually have the plans for even the one line, which is what we'd call the one line, every area in the house, like he's been showing the blueprint. So I'm pretty sure there's somewhere on there that shows this setup and he's just doing it per their request.
Yeah. I think it's important to realize that, like I said, some kind of clamp on that grounding electrode conductor that comes out because of his bigger hole. That is obviously no way to condone the fact that a non-metallic sheath cable clamp is designed for a single grounding electrode conductor, because it's not. But you see it all the time, and at the end of the day, he's already knocked out that half-inch knockout. So he's committed now. I mean, he's got to put something in it. So we'll see what he does.
And for most of electrical, it's all pretty much the same. You just want to set yourself up for success. You just want to make sure that you're doing the most prep work possible to make things easier for when you go to do the job. And it's the same for anything you're doing. So right now I'm just putting in a 2-inch TA with a 2-inch lock nut and a bushing. I don't understand why we put bushings on, but that's what the company wants. It just doesn't make sense. If it was metal, then I wouldn't complain about it. But
so interesting. So let's talk about that. And I don't know what he's running yet, Jay, but that is an interesting topic that people talk about. If he runs the cable between the two, then he wouldn't need that bushing. If he runs individual insulated conductors and the size is 4 and larger, then even if it's PVC, he needs those bushings. So it's just the way it is in the code. And so if it's a cable, bushing's not required. If it's
plastic, PVC or metal, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. So so in his case, if they were insulated 4 and larger, then he'd have a requirement. But PVC requires it. Even if you're thinking PVC, the issue is that if it's insulated conductors and they're 4 and larger, then he's going to have to do it. If it's a cable he sticks through there and all he does is strip everything out of the cable and leaves the sheathing on this much as he puts it through there, which you can put, a cable in a raceway. Okay. And then people want to say, well, that's not a raceway, it's a nipple. Jack. It's a raceway. Whether it is 6 inches long, 8 inches long, 3 feet long, it's a raceway. Okay. Just get that clear. All right. So Message sent, Grunberg. All right, so let me go back to
Received.
there you go.
So same thing on this side, 2-inch TA, 2-inch lock nut, and putting a bushing in.
There's absolutely nothing
don't
wrong
think
with
you
putting
need
a
it,
bushing
but
in, even if you're not
it's what our
required, by the
company
way.
wants.
If you want to do it, go for it.
Same thing for the same thing for the pipe going down. And then here's my 1/2-inch TA. That's going to be for the 4/7 wire connected to the ground rod and to the 4/7 that's attached to the.
When he says 4/7, folks, he means stranded 4. Ground rods don't require it to be larger than 6. We know that in 250.66a. But can you run a 4 to it? Absolutely. If that's what you want to run, knock yourself out, right? And maybe on your truck, Jay, maybe you keep everything 4 because it works for whether or not you have rods or whether or not you have a UFER. So you're like, dude, I'm just going to consolidate. I'm just going to carry 4 bare. Maybe that's what their company does, and that way, just like, dude, I'm running 4 to the rods. Well, it doesn't have to be larger than a 6. I don't care. That's what I've got. That's what I buy it by the big reel. That's what I'm running. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Yeah, and without seeing
We're not there
the
yet.
one line diagram and what they're calling
There's
out.
no one line. There's no one line on this residential, dude. Where are you living?
You don't think so at all?
Hell no. Hell no. This is just a
Oh,
service.
man, I guess these are single dwellings. When I did the multifamily ones, they had the one line, but that's when we were setting like the gear that had like 7-meter stacks on one, and we would have to do the grounding electroconductor a certain size based on, again, the engineer. So if you don't think there's anything, I'm just saying maybe their specs call for it. I guess that's what I'm saying. If in their specs they're saying run a number 4, and you've said this before,
Oh,
maybe
yeah, if that's in the specs, but
is calling for it, and you do it unless you call the engineer and say, hey, the code does say 6. Am I okay with doing it? No, I don't.
Yep.
I don't want that. I want you to stick to the 4. Okay, well then I have to do it.
Yeah, and in all fairness, he did say that the bushings, and we don't know what he's going to do yet, but he did say the bushings were something. He says, I don't know why we put them on there. That's what my company wants, that he works for. So you're right. So the company could say, I don't really care what you like. You're going to use bushings, whether you need it or not, depending on what he's running, because we don't know what he's going to run yet, whether he's going to do individual conductors. We don't know. Or, he could turn around and say, he could say, well, my company forces me to run 4-gauge to all that anyway. So, I mean, that's fine. But if there was one, I never had a one line for the service. So even in residential, even when they did the drawings and layout, I never had anything that told me what to do for the service. I had layouts for receptacles and space, but I never had anything that told me how to do the service. But maybe they do. But
yeah, I don't think I ever had one on just initial single family dwellings. When I had multifamily, like townhomes, well, not even with the townhomes, I don't think. I don't know.
Townhomes I didn't. When I had multifamily, which is 3 or more units.
Yep.
Then that's when because they were required to be engineered drawings for that.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Yep. So then I'd have something to do that, but that doesn't mean that nobody, like you said, that doesn't mean that this company does a lot of these, right? And they already might have this stuff down and put it on paper because they want every one of them to be the same. So yeah, follow whatever they tell you. It's they're the one. He's just doing it what the boss man wants. Yep. So.
And Adam said he's got extra SE wire anyways, saving money for his company. I looked at that extra little piece that he had, about 7 feet. That wasn't bad for going from the garage on the main level.
No, he measured that out pretty good.
Across the attic, and then down down another floor to the main level, poking out to this disconnect, and only having that 7-8 feet. I was pretty impressed seeing his other cable length in his box in previous videos. I was pretty darn impressed. But like you said, Paul, maybe
he's going to obviously he's going to pull those conductors out, because you wouldn't use SCR between this and the meter. You only need 3 conductors. So if he was smart, the one benefit that you have with SCR is that you can strip off the sheathing and still use the conductors inside because they are marked. You can't do that with NMB because they're not marked. But with SER, you could, because the marking is on the actual insulated conductors. So maybe that is what he's going to do. We don't know yet. We'll see. But I wouldn't go buy any extra conductors for that.
Makes sense.
Yep. So we'll see what he's going to do. Oh, it's all this speculation. It's exciting.
Clear shit on that. I don't even know. All right, for this, I know it might cause a little controversy, but this is my 2-inch Romex connector for where my service is coming out. I just totally get rid of that one piece to clamp down on my 4.0 wire coming outside. But I've never heard anything back from it. Like, once I put fire foam on the other side, they don't even notice. So.
Okay. So he does not clamp his clamp to his SE. He throws that piece away and he foams over it and says the inspector never finds it. Hey, inspector, you need to start looking. So it is probably a reason why he does it, trying to get it in the wall. But you can put the daggone clamp. Don't put the clamp on it. Put together the way it's supposed to be. Do not do what he just said. Okay. He took it apart and threw the part that screws down onto the cable and threw it off. I've done plenty of installations on the outside exterior like this, and I've always been able to use the connectors and get them tight on it and get enough. So don't do that, because he's openly saying that he foams over it so the inspector never sees it and never had a problem with it. Okay.
I think the issue is when you prefab it like he's doing, and you put that 2-inch in the back of that disconnect already, and you go and put the cable, push it through on the other, after you set it on, you push it through, you can't screw down those 2 screws on that 2-screw there. Well, the solution is to screw on the cable and then push it through and lock nut it after you've already set your gear. That's what I would do. I'd put the 2 screw on the cable, take off the lock ring, push that connector inside the back of the box, and then go around the front side and put my lock ring and bushing on that way.
Mm-hmm. Or you put it on the cable already. You have poked out the hole. You cut a big hole, poke it out.
Yeah.
You can adjust it, take it outside. That disconnect weighs nothing. Go outside, put it up on it, and see where you're tighten it a little bit, see where it's at. And if it's not enough, pull it off, move your connector a little bit, tighten the screws down again on it, put it back. You got a little bit of play in there, okay, in order to get it in. So that's BS to say just throw it away. So that's a -1 negative strike on him so far. Man, he was held so high in regard, but he's kind of went downhill with that one. All right, let's go.
All right, this 1/2-inch pipe, I'm just cutting off a piece. There's no measurement necessary, just a little piece. And then bump that into the...
All right, so what he's doing, I get what he's doing. So now we're getting a piece. So I don't even have to worry about fitting on that grounding electroconductor. He's actually going to sleeve it down PVC. Okay, I'm okay with that then. He's going to sleeve it down PVC, whatnot, through the PVC. Okay, so it looks like that's what he's going to do.
1/2-inch TA. And all we're doing is just prepping this before we get outside.
That's all he's going to do too, so I barely see the point of that, but whatever. So that's the next question somebody's going to be saying, Jay. Somebody's going to say it. They're going, wait a minute. You mean he's taking his grounding electroconductor out of the meter? It can't come out of the meter. Well, the code says it can come out of anywhere on the supply side of the service disconnect all the way up to the point of attachment. So you can say in your jurisdiction they won't let you do it in the meter because you don't get access to it. You don't need access to it. Whoever needs to get access to it can cut the tab off and get access to it. You don't have to have. It's not, that termination is not required to be that thing. So at the end of the day, there's plenty of them I've seen go in the meter. And to be honest with you, that's the best place, because if you have lightning, a surge, or transients, you want it to get to Earth as quick as it can without coming into the building or into the components. So, I mean, meter's great. as long as your jurisdiction's not going to give you any grief over it, but the code has no problem with it. That's perfectly okay to make that connection to the grounded conductor in the meter location. That's perfectly okay. But I knew that somebody would see this and say, well, why is he doing that in the meter? Doesn't he have to do that in the service disconnect? No. Traditionally we do, but it can be in the meter. It's not a problem with that. Code-wise, still got to check with your jurisdiction because you still have inspectors who might not understand, might not get the language of the code that says anywhere from up to including the service disconnect all the way up to the point of attachment. They might not get it, right?
Yeah.
So just be aware of it.
Yeah, and I would have maybe threw just a little bit of PVC glue on the tip of that before going in there, because that's an instance where someone could pull down on that half-inch and it could come
Yeah,
from that. But that's just.
I haven't seen. Well, you're right, and I haven't seen a little can of it anywhere. So, I guess everything is.
Stuff fits in there snug when you hit it with the hammer, and it feels like it's snug. But again, stuff starts moving, and
well, it's required. You're required to make it up. So if you're going to connect if you're going to connect the connector to the actual raceway, then you need to connect it up. So, all right.
They got a little spot right here just specifically for this wire.
Time tracking is fun.
Oh,
Said no one ever.
all right. Let's get past this little commercial here.
And at this point in the meter, the neutrals and the grounds are together. The one thing you won't see in this video is where I'm actually bonding the neutrals and the grounds. I did that before this video even started, and while I was in the box. This right here, what I'm putting on is a ground bar kit, and it's
Basically, that's an inter-system bonding connection. That's required to have this when you have communication systems at a building. So this is rated for communication. This is so you can take things like Dish Network, DirecTV, all of their connections to it. So this is a requirement in the code. It's called inter-system bonding termination. So he's putting it on there, that type of thing. Now, typically, these are required to be physically mounted to the enclosure, not just to be suspended from the grounding electrode conductor. But we'll assume that he is going to do all that, but that's what he's putting on. So
mainly used for your TV and phone company.
well, he's really making it all up, Jay. Almost everything ahead of time, isn't he? There you go, Jay. That's your prefab.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need a little.
Huh?
I'm curious to see how it's gonna look, or because he has to take that plastic piece back off to mount it. I mean, I think some of it is necessary, but there's some things that maybe like that. I don't know. So I've told you I prefab some things out in the field. I had to get used to it. I had to see if it worked, if it didn't work. But I'm curious to see if that makes it go quicker.
Yeah, we'll see what he does.
2-inch pipe that's going to connect in between the two TAs from the disconnect and the meter. And I'm just using my fingers to ream out the chunks from the cut.
See any glue yet?
No, I think it's in that van over there.
All right, these are my meter blocks, my vinyl blocking, and for them to, in order to look like they go together, you just gotta cut the tabs off of one side on each.
So he's gonna sandwich them together. You ever use those, Jay?
No.
You ever use those? Those are designed where you have siding, and it really looks funky sitting on siding. So these actually create flat surfaces, and you nail them up just like you would the siding, and then the siders just side everything to it, and so it makes a nice clean look. I've used these the last couple of houses I did before we were done. We had to use these things, and they did make it look cleaner.
So this is what I'm saying about laying everything out. Just so you know that you cut out the right side of the hole. I don't have any extra material, so I gotta make it work the first time. All right, so what I'm doing right here is this is where my service wires are gonna come through to the disconnect. So I'm just sawzalling as low as I can, because if you don't do it as low as I'm doing right here, I just get used to seeing it. I don't do measures and I don't draw out. I'm not tracing out any holes. I've just seen this kind of work so much that I know where I'm going. So this is as far low as I can on this vinyl blocking, and that's where my disconnect's gonna go.
You know what you can tell by this neighborhood, Jay? This isn't the first one, and we've talked about this. This isn't the first one he's done. So if somebody says, whoa, stop and measure, why didn't you get out a hole saw, you know, blah, blah. Obviously, he's doing all these homes probably in this subdivision, right? So he's done quite a few of these.
Yeah, and once you've done one of that model, you've kind of done them all, and
yeah,
he knows what he's doing.
Just throwing away pieces of a connector, violating the codes. What he's doing, I'm just saying.
My girlfriend don't like it.
There you see it. There you see it over here. See that? You see it in the picture? So that is it. That's this block that he puts up.
Yes. Alright, so I'm just folding this thing up a little bit. Slide my vinyl block up. And if you're new to this, I would suggest that you get a level, just so you know that you're not crooked. And I used to use staples for this all the time, but apparently the staples that I put up might cause a little bit of rust, so I started using these screws. So we're going to need 2 of these. So we got one side for the disconnect and then one side for the meter.
I think they were DR Horton homes. I think they were. Oh yeah, it says right on it. DR, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the disconnect. We're gonna slide this over the wire. Yeah, you get dirty looks. Don't be laughing on my video, bitch. Alright, so we're gonna pop this up there. And this is a lot easier to do with a partner. But like I said, like I've done this by myself so many times, and you got to learn how to do it by yourself. I mean, it's nice to have a partner, but you're not always going to be in that situation. I don't know what it is. It's about putting these 3-inch hex heads in this. It just doesn't want to go through the vinyl blocking easily.
Yeah, so just address that. Like Joel said, they noticed that the house across from it only had the meter. So obviously this has nothing to do with 2020. This has to do with the location of where they wanted the panel. So it just might be the other ones, the panels were on the other side of the wall, and this one, the panel was out in the garage, and it might be where the transformer has set, and the power company is like, this is the side I'm coming to, whether you like it or not. This is it. This is what you get. So in order to work that out, he had to run the SER across and everything like that.
So that's all we're doing. So now I'm just checking to make sure it's straight.
Note to self, have a level, little torpedo level.
And
That's all you need.
the meter base is all dependent on which side of the house the power company is going to plow into from the junction box that they have. Sometimes they plow across the driveway, sometimes it's right in front of that little green box. But we've come across a lot of situations where the power company wants it on the opposite side of where, what is it called? the sewage is going to be. They don't want it on the same side as the sewage, so if it is on the same side of the sewage, they will plow the service in across the driveway, but it's kind of rare. A lot of people are way ahead of planning, and they get it right the first time.
So it's safe to say no gluing any joints, no gluing any raceways. So it's not finished up, glued in, done. So it's not going anywhere. But again, just so everybody knows, Whack Jacker would make him put a strap in the middle of that, just so y'all know, because he believes that the code requires a strap in the middle of that because that's going to go somewhere. Even if this guy doesn't even glue it, it ain't going nowhere. I'm just going to say it. But, you know, common sense sometimes gets lost, right? That type of thing. So, I don't know, Jason. Does he need a strap or not? I mean, you know, again, it's, you know.
Usually you can plan on the meter being on the side where the little green box is beside your driveway. So this is the hardest part of putting up the meter if you're doing it by yourself. It's just an awkward moment to hold that meter up and to drill it in, because once again, getting that 5/16 head screw through.
You know, he's lucky. He's lucky that he's got OSB back there, because there's a lot of homes that ain't nothing but Celotex and some of that backer foam, right?
Yeah.
So he's mounting this stuff, and he's got plenty of stuff to screw those things into and grab. You ever done one of those ones where they nothing but that silverback Celotex stuff, and you put something up and you got nothing to hardly screw into, and you got to find, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, those ones are tough. Luckily he does, and he's using the 3-inch tech screws, which that's what we would use in this instance. The only difference I would do is I would have a level on the top so I could see, because, you know, just because that pipe coming across, or you think you got it at a certain height, you still want to throw a level on it, because that's what the level's for. So I just don't understand how you do so much prep work and no shots at Brandon. Again, he's done a million of these, but you do all that prep work to be quicker and faster to make it look good, and then you just don't put a level on it. I don't understand that. That, to me, that's elementary.
Yeah. And Joey, you could say no strap is needed, but there are people out there that believe there's no definition of a nipple. It's all a raceway, okay? And chase pipe, whatever you call it, it's a raceway. Small raceway, short raceway, but there are some people out there that would believe that you need to have a strap on that. Not me, but there are some people, believe it or not, and they might go off and do a podcast with 2 or 3 listeners. They believe that there would be, but I'm just saying. All right, let's go.
Through the vinyl blocking into the OSB can kind of keep messing with you. It's not that easy. So now I'm going to put the pipe down. And the first one I'm going to do here is the 1/2-inch pipe for the ground rod. After I get this screw in. The laptop's kind of getting hot. So with the 4/7 ground, I'm just trying to get it down to the dirt. And now we got some 2-inch pipe. And for this neighborhood, all I have to do is get it down to the dirt. And for a lot of other neighborhoods, I have to dig down 24 inches. And put a 90 on it, and that 90 has to be at least at 2 foot. But again,
all right, make it clear here. So he says he only got getting down to the dirt. That would be remember now, if this is a service lateral, it's outside the scope of the NEC. It's a service lateral, right?
Yeah.
If he's running it, and he might contract it for the utility from, let's say, and I don't think he is, obviously, because all he says he's got to do is stick it down. They're going to put everything in it. The hope is they will probably come in and they will extend it down and they will put their 90 on it and do all this kind of stuff, right? Those type of things. But at the end of the day, and again, Joel, this would only have to be Schedule 80 if it was determined to be subject to physical damage in that type of scenario. So, you know, who knows is installed, but at the end of the day, I'm always err on the side of caution and go with Schedule 80. But it is true that most of the time when you're putting this down, most people will, in a lot of jurisdictions, they don't even, the utilities, they run everything up to the meter. But the other thing I noticed I don't know where he's at, but he obviously doesn't have any requirement, because people ask this about earth movement. So 300.5J put in an expansion fitting. Obviously, that's not it. There is no earth movement, or they don't have that issue wherever he's at, right? So, you know, yeah, you're right. It's not my wife driving, and it's not in our driveway beside our house, so the conduit's probably perfectly safe. But at the end of the day, most of the time when I would put them down, we would have to put it down and we would turn a 90 on it. We'd have to go down. We have to meet the depth requirements that the utility wanted. Not necessarily what the NEC under 300.5 would say, because this typically we were doing it for the contract, for the utility. And so they have their own requirements that they have to meet, that type of thing. So keep that in mind, but it looks like he's running everything down. So anything else? Nothing else to add on it. We do see his TV, his coaxials, telephones, and TVs and everything there. That's what that intersystem bonding connection is for, the utilities that come in and bring the TV and cable in. They have a place to connect to, which we know they never connect to. But it's there for them anyway if they want.
And this just has to do with what the power company wants. So after doing this for a while, you start to learn what the power company wants, and you just got to know what's going on. I'm just reaming out the end with my fingers and just trying to shove it up there, and it's not going that well. So I end up just flipping it around and using the prefab cut. All right, and now we're gonna strap. I'm gonna strap the.
So again, he's obviously not putting any glue on anything. Okay, you know, I'm not a plumber. But when we do our electrical work, we do our PVC, we do use to interconnect the pieces. We want to PVC them together. We want to PVC glue them together. So he's obviously not on any of it. Okay.
The 1/2-inch pipe. And this won't matter later on because the siding guys are going to come in and they're going to take these straps off. But it does matter for that 2-inch pipe because the electrical company is going to come in and plow it before the siding goes up. And they need that strap just to make sure that the pipe is going to be perpendicular and straight. It's not going to look all crooked. So I'm just putting that stripe in just so it looks nice and straight for whenever they run their wires up. And that ground bar kit, I'm just putting the lid on it. A lot of times they lose that shit though, and we ended up having to pay for a whole bunch of them.
You need to secure that to that enclosure, to the side. So maybe they will. They probably will when the siding gets put on.
So here we are back to the 4.0 wire. So when I'm cutting this 4.0 wire at this time, I'm concentrating on my ground wire. I was cutting it long enough for my ground wire because it's the hardest to get up in. It has to have the nicest cut, and my Sawzall will give it the nicest cut. I could cut it with my side cutters, but it's gonna kind of span out the wire, and it's gonna make it hard to get up in there. And the ground part of this.
Here's some trivia for you. When you're taking NM cable or NM non-metallic type of cables into a box, then you have to bring the sheathing in 1/4 inch. When it comes to 312 and you're dealing with cabinets, cutout boxes, and meter enclosures, It doesn't state anywhere in there about 1/4 of an inch of sheathing into the box, ironically enough. So trivia, in case you didn't know.
This wire, the hole that they give you for it is kind of like the perfect size, and it's really stupid. They need to make it a little bigger. And that's for all of these type of disconnects.
Drinking.
Yeah, they just put it in the hole, dude. I'm just saying.
Understand why they don't make the hole big enough for the wire we're putting in it. It's always a struggle. It don't make no sense to me. So it's aluminum wire. I'm putting no locks in it, and that just in case there's a surge of any kind, aluminum wire will melt, and they don't.
All right, so that has nothing to do with why he's putting antioxidant compound in there. It's not even required for this installation. Again, it's a good ounce of preventative. There's a great chance that he's not going to torque anything anyway. So if you torque it properly in the metal to metal contact between that's probably 8,000 series aluminum into that 6,000 series lug, aluminum lug, then what's going to happen is you're not going to have oxidation at the two touch contact points. So you're not going to have a breakdown, right? So really the antioxidant compound gets squished away from that anyway, and it's probably compact aluminum, so there is no interstices to worry about. You can use it if you want. Go for it. If that piece of equipment said that you needed it, okay, but they don't. So, but it's still an ounce of prevention. But people ask me that all the time. And you know what? Did I use antioxidant compound? Absolutely. The difference is I used to use it whether it was copper or aluminum, because the kind I had was petroleum based and it worked either or. But at the end of the day, it was a habit, but it's not required. Okay. Now, even if a manufacturer's like us, Encore Wire, tell you we make wire and cable, people say, well, if we recommend you use it, that's part of their listing. It is not part of our listing. We're just making a general recommendation. That's all. Right? It's not the same as being part of a UL listing, because all of our products have to be UL listed. There's a lot of products in the code that you can use. It doesn't have to have a listing. I believe if you didn't know that or not. But in our case, all of our products have to be listed. Okay. But the antioxidant's not required. Take it easy.
And I guess
Jason.
the no locks is supposed to stop it from melting in there.
It has nothing to do with that, just so y'all know.
So now I'm just taking out the lugs for the neutrals and the hots.
Okay. Good question. So Matt says, did he secure the SCR to the enclosure and put the connector on? I guess he did. No, he didn't.
Because he threw those screws in that clamp away, that half part that comes off. He threw it away.
That's right. Remember? He tossed it.
So it's a floating cable right now that's going to get foamed in, and the foam is going to cover up that 2-screw connector, and he's kind of tricking the inspector is what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's going to foam it on the backside, and so, the inspector's not going to make you chisel off that foam, right? Because that stuff is like a rock when you put it on stuff. So he's saying I had to seal the opening for, air and temperature changes and whatnot like that. And the inspector's going to go, oh, okay, I get it. And all this time he's never clamped it. And I know some people say that's right, and the house hasn't burned down yet. I get it. But somebody like me comes in forensically and looks at it, I'm going to nitpick everything. And if I ever get called out to these homes, I'm going to go and chisel off that foam and sell, and it could happen in the other side of the house, but I'm going to make a case for that not having a clamp on it. I'm just saying. Let's not bash him now. He did good up to 10. So
I'm just taking out all 3 of these lugs, and then I'm going to slide all of the wires up there at one time.
I guess what he could have done, Jay, is just put a TA on the back of that and just pushed it through the connector. And essentially that's what he's doing, right? I mean, yeah. He's not strapping it. He's just pushing it through the connector. He's just making it look like it's okay. That type of thing. So, and yes, he doesn't need that bushing on it, but He probably put the bushing on it because it also masks what's happening behind it back in there. I mean, it obscures a little bit of the view. Maybe that's why he's using it. I don't know. No, he said his owners require him to put the bushing.
Yeah,
well, I bet you the owners require him to use those screws in that clamp as well. Just saying.
And then no locks them at one time. And then put all the things in. See, I would prefer them wires to go up and around into the top. And this basically just works the same as a switch. This is a single pole switch for 2 hots and a neutral.
All right, little comment. Go ahead.
No, Maddie says, and a level with the question. I don't understand it. No level.
Yeah, no level. I guess it looks pretty decent. I guess.
I mean, it looks good though. I mean, if it's level, it's level. He kind of stood back and viewed it, but.
Yeah, but you know what? But you know, at the end of the day, also I'll make a comment how he says he likes to go into the top. I'll only say this: be careful with your breakers. This one's probably not an issue, but there is also a lot of them that'll say line and load. And so you have to be careful what you're doing. And this one might not matter. But if you see one that says line on the top and load on the bottom, and you cut your cables too short, right? And you come into load and you go out the line into, that'll be a problem. So if your disconnect doesn't care, it doesn't matter, that's fine. But if you get one that's got embossed in it line and load or anything like that on it, you better remember what the line is. Line's coming from that meter. Load is going out to that remote panel, right? Don't get caught in the middle of that, okay? Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does matter, depending on what's in that disconnect and what they have stamped in there. So everyone's different. Every manufacturer's a little different. Just, you know, keep that in mind. Dude, I'd hate to get that far. And he had plenty of cables, so this wasn't an issue of, you know what I mean, cutting it off. I mean, he had plenty of cable to do this. Okay, so we'll assume that his disconnect doesn't matter, but he did make a statement how he likes to come to the top, that type of thing. So, but he's not in these, obviously.
But we're just going to go into the bottom here because that's what our company prefers. There is no line or load side, and I would argue that with anybody. I argue it at work every time.
You can't argue with me, bro. If that panel, if that in the back of that, and you guys have all seen it, if it's stamped line and load, then you follow it. You have to follow the way it's marked in there. So if it's not, then you know it doesn't matter. But you have to be careful. Also, if you look at the legend, if there's any legend on the inside of that cover or whatnot, and that has a depiction on how it's to be done, and you have to follow it, that's where the intended path was. If there is no markings, that doesn't matter.
But they're not going to be happy until I put them into the bottom. So I'm just going to do what they want. And right now, I'm taking off about 3/4 of an inch of this.
He's a rebel.
I don't want to take off too much. I don't want too much wire exposed. So I'm just going to move these wires around. And I'm going into the bottom. The middle one is the ground and the neutral, and then the outsides are the hots. This is the only place in the house where the grounds and the neutrals are bonded. I didn't show you that part, but if you made it this far in the video, then I'm pretty sure.
All right, let me give you some tip. It does no good to remove the lug and just put your conductor in it and then squirt it in the hole. Okay? Because the only surface area that, if you're doing this, it's only going to be underneath the lug. And this is compact aluminum. You want to, if you're going to do it, you need to put it around the conductor, or you can fill the hole up, right? And then push it up into it so that it's evenly all around it. Defeats the entire purpose to simply put the wire in and then squirt it in the hole. It's like you're trying to do it just to meet an inspector's intent, and you're not required to have this antioxidant on it anyway. So don't do that. Don't move the plug. Don't, the Allen wrench, the screw in, and then just put your conductor in there and then squeeze it in there. not the preferred way to do it. If you're going to use it, okay.
Or you figured it out by now. Especially with like art faults and GFI breakers, the new ones. It really matters. So, but this is the only place where the grounds and the neutrals are together.
That is correct. At the service disconnecting means.
In the
And
panel,
he's not
on the
using,
panel side,
and
they're
it
separate.
should be pretty evident to folks. He is not using a torque wrench. Now, for everybody gets all wonky donkey about the torque wrenching, you should always do it. If you're going to do it, you should at least always do it at service and feeder connections. Now, we can argue it everywhere. We can argue it in the panel. We can argue it on the breaker. We can argue it at the receptacles, the switching, yada, yada, yada. But where you should always do it is definitely at the service and definitely in feeder applications. Okay. That's where you should be using a torquing device in order to make sure that you're torquing it to the inch pounds or foot pounds, depending on what you're doing, that's listed on the actual enclosure. And it will be listed on there. He does have a value for torquing on that equipment that he should follow. And he's not. And I get it. Okay. So, and Jay may have an interesting video. I don't know if he'll do it. Talking about backstabbing that's going to turn all you people who are the negative ninnies, make you think a little bit. But I don't know. I'm not putting words in Jay's mouth, but he might do something like that. Okay. But, you know, he would be, backstab for life, baby. All right.
For life.
For life. All right. So.
And this part can be a little bit of a struggle. It's just tight area, you know, and the wire is kind of tough. But with a little bit of work, you can get it in there.
And just so you know, torquing devices are not expensive. Okay, I don't care if you go pick up one at Harbor Freight. It's better than using nothing. And they're available there. I got one there. Okay. My other ones I used to have were, I don't remember who, like Snap-on or whatever it used to have or something. But at the end of the day, you can get them now. They are not that expensive. And it's certainly better than just not doing it. Because you can damage a conductor by over-torquing it, over-tightening it. And it's just as bad as under-tightening it. Okay, so just be aware of that. You're only as good as your termination.
This is the load side, and then
okay, so he says technically this is the load side. Tells me that something's marked in there, and I can't hardly tell, but it looks like up near that set screw up there. Usually they have stamped in there line. I'm just saying. So, and he said this is technically the load side, but, you know, and it is. It's the load that's going out inside. So, to put it all in context, and the reason we said that earlier was to kind of remind you. But he's not totally wrong in this perception here, because those are coming in from the back going into the load. He was making a statement he likes to go to the top. And so, we were saying, if he had have wrapped his around to the top, then he would be bringing them in. I think he would be bringing them into the line side. So he should be right in the way this is set up. He needs to be on the load side. So I'm not sure what he meant. I'm not sure, Jay, do you remember what he meant? I think he is on the load side of this disconnect, because I think I see markings up here that probably say line. So
he meant that there wasn't. He said that there wasn't a line in load, but the way that he has it set up, in my experience,
there's a line in load
like this. That's exactly what it is. So if he did go to the top, it wouldn't work the way it's designed to work.
Yeah, and he says that he said earlier that he always goes to the top. So yeah. I don't have anything wrong with what he's doing. I just we talked about it to clarify it, but it looks to me like there's, and I can't tell, but it looks like something up here. A lot of these usually
That
have
also might be top. That also might say top because
top.
you know how some of those
Yep.
cabinets have top on them to where you've
Yep.
seen them too, where they're installed upside down instead of top. It's pot or something, pot or something
Yeah.
backwards.
Yep. Yep.
It's like
So
turning
as we
the switch upside down.
So as we were talking earlier, it's not necessarily wrong. He had enough conductor to do whatever he wants. He had enough cable. He could done whatever he wants. But the way he was talking about it made it sound like it was something with this disconnect. But I mean, the way I look at it, the line's going to come in from the meter and wrap into the top, and going out the bottom is the load. And he said this is actually the load. I would think so. So I'm not sure what he's got going on. But I mean, this is how I'd wire it. I mean, I wouldn't wire it like this, by the way. But I mean, that's how I would. I'd be going into the bottom of that, like he's doing. So I'm not sure what he meant by that.
Next thing, we're going to be working on the line.
All right,
So
so
I
there's
got a
his
little
SC.
extra piece here. I ordered a little bit extra wire so I would have enough for this part.
You made a good observation, Jay. Boy, he ordered that SCR just perfect. I mean, everything else was, a little long, but that's because it comes on a reel. Here's where the money shot right here. He needed a certain length, and boy, he's using every piece of that SCR.
And we're just discarding the ground wire. We don't need it anymore. All we need is that neutral.
Okay, and now since he is using the conductors individually now in this, and they can because they're marked, he would need those bushings on that raceway in the middle because they're 4 gauge and larger insulated conductors. And so he does need it. So he says, I don't know why my company makes me put these on. Well, they make you put them on because it's required to put them on, right? So that's because he's running individual conductors now through that small raceway there, right?
Yep, exactly.
So his company was absolutely right telling him to do it. Dude, does that nipple look slanted?
So the way I did this, I left a little gap behind the wires. I just kind of folded them in a way to where like I could go behind with this 2-inch pipe.
Dude, that's 4/0 aluminum. You didn't kind of leave them that way. That's all you could get bend out of them. So that's going to happen itself, right? So anyway, he's like, I left it that way. I manipulated. I made it this way. No, you didn't.
And the middle one in this situation is usually the neutral. It's attached to that ground wire you see. And there's already no locks in this meter. This company,
There's a lay-in locks.
I don't know, I think it's an Ori meter. But the Ori meters that we use already put a little bit of no locks in there, so there's no need to put any on this side. And see, I got my finger right behind that screw. I'm trying to take it all the way out, but not to where the piece comes out. Alright, so we're using the black. Red or black, don't matter. Taking off about 3/4 of it.
He Jedi mind tricked it.
And typically, this is how I do it every time. I do the neutral first, and then I do the hard bend second, and then the next one is just nice and smooth, all right behind those wires I just put in on the load side. Just a little struggle.
Fight it, bruh.
And never
Fight
mind my t-shirt. It's basically a shop towel or something. It's a little tight, but you just gotta work it in there.
Freaking almost falling.
Nice and tight, like a tiger. red and black, same thing. 3/4. And this is the easy one, except it's hard to push through because it's getting a little tighter now with all those wires in a 2-inch pipe.
All right, Jay. So the next question I just wanted to point out, because we'll have a Jackerson moment. So chapter 9, table 1. A lot of people say, what about raceway fill for this 2-inch? Now, obviously, Traits has 2 here. If you look at chapter 9, table 1, note 4, notes are very much applicable. It says where conduit or tubing nipples, okay, having a maximum length not exceeding 24 inches. Okay, so we don't define a nipple, but we talk nipple. We speak, and we're giving you distances definitely for an application. So when somebody does something that is 3 feet, okay, that's not a nipple because it's still a raceway. So even in this one, it says tubing nipples, it's still a raceway, right?
Yeah.
But it's defining that if it is maximum length not exceeding 24 inches, so it's 24 inches, then we can kick it into calling it a nipple because we're able to actually fill it up to 60%, right? Whereas normally we would be, we would like, okay, well, we can't do that. Over 2, we're going to fill it to 40%. But if it's 2 feet or less, we can fill it up to 60%, those type of scenarios. That's where we get those allowances in chapter 9, table 1, in the notes, like note 4. Then we get to utilize it in the raceway fill requirements, which, by the way, this Wednesday night for the fast track students, we're doing raceway fill calculations, and we're going to cover it all. So all you fast track students, Wednesday night, mark your calendar, be there or be square. We're going to go over that and answer all your questions you could ever have on raceway fill. Okay. How was that, Jay, for a nice little segue into
That was perfect.
Wednesday night training? Okay. Push it, bruh. Push it, bruh. Push it, bruh. And all of this is going to his subby, bruh. A trademark of the Basement King. Just saying.
Yeah, Adam.
Take care, Adam.
No, I don't need no locks on the meter side because it's already got a little bit. So here I am working with the neutral, just cutting off what I need. And that's going to go in middle, just like it did on the bottom side. And it's really obvious once you get your hands on it and you're looking inside, it's pretty obvious what's going on. Different disconnects call for different bonding, so he's got to make sure that, as my boss would say, your due diligence and making sure things are correct. Kevin. Alright, this side doesn't have any no locks on it, so with all aluminum wire, you have to make sure you put a little bit on. It's code.
Not required, but go ahead. It's
and
not
the
code.
lugs, I start with my fingers. You have to start them with your fingers because a lot of people, they go in this and they buy the bit for this. Like, I don't even know what size the bit is. Let's say it's a 1/2 inch. And you put it on your bit and you start it off. If you strip those lugs out, you might have to replace way more than you think. And then you have to worry about exactly what the torque is in putting one of those new breakers in. Like, it's a pain in the dick. You got to start it with your hands, and then you can finish it off with your bit. But
you know
I
what?
lost my bit.
Here's what I think. This is probably a different video because in the last one, by the end of the video, I think he found Jesus. But in this one, I think it's early on and Satan has a grip on him. So that's why we're, you know, it's a little different, this one versus the other one. I'm just saying. It's an observation. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the dates because this one's May 23rd, and I don't remember what the other dates were on those ones. But I'm pretty sure you're right. I think this one was probably before the before the light moment.
I don't know where it is. I wish I did, but it's whatever.
And I want to say those lugs
Yeah.
are 3/8. They're probably 3/8.
Oh, okay.
Just, and I think.
I think he needs a torque wrench, but I'm just gonna say that.
Forget. We laugh at that.
Again, folks, if you're gonna use antioxidant compound, go on and put it on the conductor first. Squeeze some in the top if you have to, then put it in. This doesn't help much putting it in from the front, that type of thing.
Yeah, and for when I was doing them, I would just take the bottle, and I would take the cap off the whole bottle and
dip it.
You know, just dip it. You know, squeeze a little bit on the bottom, and it comes up like, you know, how toothpaste comes out, and you just dip your 3/4 inch strip wire, right, you know, conductor right there inside of it, and then right into it. It's that simple, you know. I mean, you might get a little bit on your hands, but just go home and wipe it on your jeans, whatever. But that was how I did it. Pretty.
I was gonna say that stuff is petroleum based, man. That stuff don't want to come off, but
no, it doesn't, man. It sucks. Get some dirt on it right away, or something. Try to do something with it.
So since it's not required anyway, and he's pushing it in the front, it doesn't matter. So if that's what I'm surprised nobody said that. So dude, it's not required anyway, Paul. So he's shooting it in the front. It's pointless anyway, so it really doesn't matter. It's not required anyway. So again, we'll cut him some slack. At least he doesn't have it all over himself like we probably would. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that might be what's all over his shirt. I don't know what
Service tighten impacts the efficiency of our CMECP.
All right, let's get past this commercial. Make him a couple cents. All right, so the first observation, though, Jay. Look, not that it's going to matter because this is single phase. What do you think I'm going to say? I mean, I'm just going to say it. Look at his disconnect.
Oh, you're going to say on the line side to the far left, it's a black conductor. On the load side of the far left, it's the red conductor. You're going to say, or that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he's doing an X form.
That's what he's doing. I don't know. That's not gonna matter here for this single phase. But I mean, again, as long as he gets this out of his system when he goes to do 3-phase, we'll be all right. But right now, it doesn't matter. But I'm anal like that, so I'm be like red, black. That's just me, right? But I get it. Because they both could be black, it wouldn't matter. I mean, you know. So.
Right.
But I get it. But I be anal like that, so. No comments. I'll ban you. That's what I do when I don't agree with you. I ban you. That's what Jack Whacker says.
I'm not talking. Well, no, there's. Look for the bars here. Anyways, same shit.
Do we have to put a ground
Black,
on it?
red, don't matter. It's residential.
I think she said something to him.
And why did they make some grounds on cars black? That don't make no sense.
Dude, we don't talk automobile grounding here. Just leave that to the automobile guys.
Alright, I'm taking these screws out for the cover. I put them in there so I wouldn't lose them. Works in handy. Got the meter cover, got the disconnect cover. Easy peasy. lemon squeezy.
No jack whackers allowed. I like it.
But wait, we got more. My
So-
favorite part.
So, Joel, it's the same for all manufacturers. It's all of us recommend it, and the reason we recommend, I'm assuming you're talking antioxidant compound. The reason we recommend it is because this is funny how this works. All of us that make wire and cable, we're also members of the Aluminum Association, but we're also all members of the Copper Development Association. So when the Aluminum Association will put out there that they recommend it, because again, we want to preserve the longevity and the reliability of the connection. But they don't want to say that it's not also required on copper, because then it makes aluminum look like it's blazingly inferior. So we'll recommend it. So all of us manufacturers recommend it for both copper or aluminum. You make the choice, that type of thing. But if you ask us point blank, do you require it for aluminum? No. What's your recommendation? We say we support the recommendation of the Aluminum Association. The Aluminum Association will do the dirty work and tell you that it's recommended, but it's not a requirement. It's not, definitely none of the manufacturers, South, any of them, none of us require it. We recommend it, but we don't require it.
I was shocked at how easy this house was to put a ground rod down. Like, look at this shit. I swear, like, you never get this lucky.
Oh, that looks like it's going down, didn't it?
That was the easiest I've ever seen it.
I almost got this thing all the way down by my hands.
Pure Hulk vibes.
Almost.
Damn
It is
right.
going down easy though. Look at that.
I'm strong. You know what? Maybe because I'm just not an average human. You know, just like I'm
Gotcha.
like Ricky Bobby and shit. I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
This would be, oh, you know what he needs, Jay?
Yeah, I have one for
He needs.
my hammer drill, a ground rod bit for it that goes on the top of it, and you plug it in, cord plug, you get the full power.
Well, that or he needs one of Ronbo's drivers here.
Oh, yes.
That way he
yes.
doesn't have to worry about missing it. He can slide this right over the ground rod and just swing till its heart's content. Or you can do like I used to do. I had a hammer drill. I put it on there. Actually, put a block of wood under it and just left it there running. And eventually, it would come back. One thing I'll notice here, Jay, is using a copper ground rod. It's nice. But he's only putting one in, it appears. So make it clear, I don't see any of his ground resistance meters. I don't see any of his equipment. So he's got to put two in, right?
Yep.
Or this one in some other electrode, but I don't see anything. So out there, folks in the code, you got to look at 250.53. It's going to require one, if you can show that it's 25 ohms or less. If you can't show it and you can't use a regular ohm meter, okay, that doesn't work. It has to be a ground resistance meter. If you can show 25 ohms or less, then you can get away with one. If you can't, then you're going to have to supplement that ground rod with another electrode. Just so happens it could be another ground rod, but it could be any of the others in A2, A3, A4, A5, A6. Just can't be a water pipe ground. You have to supplement water pipe, but you can't use a water pipe as a supplement. So I guess in this area they only require one, that type of thing. So yeah, some people do use the fence post drivers and whatnot too. Again, I used to use a hammer drill with the ground rod extension on it. But again, contact Ronbo, get you one of these bad boys. Let's tell you what, this thing is solid right here. I actually dropped it and it cracked my floor. I didn't send Ronbo the bill because he sent this to me for free. So again, hey, what do? You can't bite the hand that gives you. So anyway, but that thing is a hefty piece of steel. They make other ones that are small round, but they're just as hard to hit as the ground rod. This thing is a lot of surface area to go whacking at, okay? Even Whack Jacker could hit this one. So
Yeah, if Rombo's out there listening, send me 4 of them. Bill
him
Paul
4.
for him.
Bill me
Yep,
for him. Yeah, that's
Bill,
right.
Bill Paul, because I could use one on each van and then one personally. So, but yeah, you're right. I have the hammer driver with the bit on it. Then I also have like a small sledge. I have the post driver too as well. Like that guy said, I actually have an extra one in my Connex right now. But yeah, that's I've used it all. The only thing I would say, guys, if you can get like a jug of water or a running
Oh yeah.
hose, put it on low and just kind of fill that hole as you're going. Get it kind of wet as you're driving that rod down. It just seems like it goes a little smoother for me. So just a thought.
You're good at that, Jay. All right, let me go on and switch here. Yeah. Strike!
All right, the
Okay,
ground rod has to
hard.
go down. Some neighborhoods want it to be down flush with the ground, and you just dig around a little bit so you can see the acorns. But this neighborhood, it doesn't really matter. Just have it about 6 inches above.
It needs to be down below grade. And in many cases, it has to be below the frost line, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, but usually just below grade. So dig out some earth, drive it down. Now, the reason he's saying 6 inches, because you can probably tell there's going to be backfill. So realistically, it's supposed to be driven. So pushing backfill around it doesn't really meet the code, right? So it has to be driven down. People ask me all the time, say, Paul, well, what if I come to the house like this and there's a lot of backfill? You know, can I just stick it in the ground? And I've seen this happen where you have, they're excavating around it and they've been waterproofing the walls and all for the basement. And you get there and you put the rod and you stick it in and go, I'm not going to do anything. They're going to push dirt around it. That's not going to work. A ground rod has to be driven. If you can't drive it, you can do it up to a 45 degree. If that doesn't work, then you can lay it in a trench, right? But you have to go in that sequence. So it needs to be driven all the way down. So don't leave your ground rods up 6 inches, because if it's an 8-foot ground rod, guess what? It's only 6.5 feet driven into the earth, and the code required to be 8-foot driven. So, you know, he says some areas required to be driven down. So this area, he says it doesn't. So I don't know why he wouldn't drive it all the way down, but just you know, your area's probably different, but the code is what it is. Okay, so the rules for installing ground rods. So here's a little tip for you, and you might already know this tip, but I take a piece of the cardboard from the panel or whatever it was, I cut a slit in it, and then I always put it over my ground rod, that type of thing, and then I put my acorn clamp on it so that it falls down onto the cardboard. So as it's driven, you know, the cardboard keeps it from, you know, the acorn getting down in the dirt, but I don't want the risk of driving it and then it mushroom the end of the ground rod, and then you can't get your clamp on it. Then you end up trying to cut it. You don't want to cut a ground rod, right? So I put the piece of cardboard over it, square over it, just cut a slit in it. Don't make a hole, just cut a slit so it has some tension on it. Put it over it, then put your clamp on it loose, let it go all the way down, and then I do my driving. That way you don't have to worry about it mushrooming out, that type of thing. And then you're not being able to get the ground rod clamp on it. Just if you're using acorns, for example.
And that's the ground to the house, the wiring underneath the concrete.
Hey, Maddie.
And the ground for the meter.
Okay, he made a statement. Okay, hold on, Jay. So he said that here's the ground for the concrete, right?
Okay.
And then he said here's the ground for the meter. Okay, so just to throw this out there, if he has a concrete encased electrode, there is no need for a ground rod. So he says that, I can't see, but he pulled one over and he said he's putting 2 clamps on it. So one of them is coming for the for the UFER, which is maybe the reason he's running a 4 down, right? Because you can only use a 6 to the ground rod if goes to that, and that's the only electrode it goes to, and it doesn't extend to another one that's larger, right? So in his design here, he's obviously got a concrete encased electrode here, okay? So, you know, that's what he's doing, and he's bringing it to the ground rod, and then going from the ground rod to the concrete encased electrode. Well, he really didn't need the one to the ground rod, but chances are that one from the concrete encased electrode wasn't long enough, and since the code requires it to be unbroken, okay, but it doesn't require the jumper to be unbroken, so he's sizing the 4 gauge. I'm assuming that's what he's doing. He's sizing the 4 gauge because the 4 gauge is what's required for the concrete encased electrode, and he's doing all that at the ground rod. Okay, not so sure. I'm not so sure I would be very keen on that type of installation, and I have to think about it. But I mean, I'm gonna have to, because he didn't mention anything about the other up to this point, right? He didn't mention anything about a U for ground or anything to this point, right?
No,
I mean, he didn't mention any of that. And if you have a UFER, you wouldn't need any ground rod to do. You don't need to supplement it. Okay, that type of thing. Now, you could say he's going to a ground rod, and now he's supplementing that rod because he couldn't meet the 25 ohms. He's supplementing it with a concrete cased electrode. If he's doing that, then that is the way it's written in the code. He would be okay to do that. So that's, you know, maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he already had this stuff planned out, Jay. I think he's figured he already had this planned out. But because of this scheme here, I definitely would want to have that driven down.
Okay.
I get it. It's probably going to be backfilled, but needs to have it driven down. Oh, that grounding electroconductor, it looks kind of Yankee, doesn't it? Little funky. What do you think?
You know the old saying, it looks good for my house.
Fired people for that. All right. So this looks like this is slanted. Right. Yeah. Okay. But everything else looks, you know, could have probably didn't measure this properly to make sure that was going to be perfectly horizontal. Right. Anyway. Okay. So that's his install. There's a lot of stuff that we looked at that. I guess we're understanding what his grounding scheme was at this point. It looks like he has a ground rod and he's actually supplementing. We'll say that. We'll say he's supplementing it, right, with a concrete cased electrode. Okay. That's, and you say, can he do that? Well, if you go look at 250.53A2, because he went to the ground rod first, it says a single rod piper electrode shall be supplemented by an additional electrode of the type specified in 250.52A2 through A8. Well, 250.52A3 is a concrete cased electrode. So guess what? He supplemented it, so theoretically he's compliant. Okay, it wasn't driven all the way, but he's compliant. So interesting way to do it there, that type of scenario. But looks like that's what he's doing. And as far as code's concerned, he met the requirements of 250.50. All of his electrodes are all tied together, and it's just how he did it. If he had taken that concrete encased electrode and taken it all the way into the panel, then he wouldn't have had need for a ground rod anyway. It would have all been done, and you don't need to supplement a concrete encased electrode. So it's just a way that he did it, in all of that type of thing. I don't know. It's argumentative whether or not it's subject to physical damage or not. And depending on where it's at, that's going to be subjective. Somebody's going to have to make that call. But when it's 6 and larger, it doesn't have to be in a raceway unless it is subject to physical damage. So unless it's on the side of my house and my wife's driving. Other than that, you know, he just did it for a cleaner look and everything looks clean and that type of thing. Any thoughts on that, Jay? I mean, we've been through 10 parts with this electrician now, and this was probably, in all fairness, this is probably earlier part. But final thoughts on this one before we end this series, and that was an extra bonus tonight, but we'll be done with this electrician, and we'll move on to a different electrician. Any thoughts?
No, he did pretty good. I liked it.
You like this clamp? You like the fact that he didn't use the clamp? Yeah.
No, I mean, there's obviously the stuff that we pointed out at the end of the day. There's obviously things that you would install different, that I would install different, or the ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But without really beating him down too much, he did a really good job. He's kicking butt on these homes. He's flying through them. I'm pretty sure that that his boss, is happy with his install. It just kind of shows that even though he has done a ton of these, and it's obvious that he's done a ton of them, he's really not measuring on many things.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show that no matter your level of expertise in what you're doing, if you lack code knowledge, sometimes you're costing more time on the job, more money on the job, and you could essentially be a lot quicker and faster if you knew the code as well as some electricians do. Mm-hmm. Because there are some areas through these 10 part series that it's like, wow, you actually didn't need to maybe run that neutral or the grounded conductor to that switch box. You could have did a dead end 3-way, like we were talking about a few episodes ago, or even this instance where maybe he did cut it from the concrete encased electrode, but he could have used an irreversible crimp that could have served that, and he could have went away with that ground rod. So I mean, there's just, and we don't know. We're speculating. We're sure. Being Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah, we're Monday morning quarterback, and it only so that we can give you insights for your install, not for this guy. He's done. But the reason we do the for us, it's what make you think about what you may do when you're put in that situation, just to give you options. We're not here to tell you how to do something. We're just here to give you options, things to think about. Like when we bring up about line and load and how he's running it and all that. It's just for you to have things to think about. That's all it is. Not for him. His is done. It's not going to help him any. In fact, he hasn't done a video for over a year, so I don't know if he's even in business anymore. But at the end, COVID might have hit him hard. So who knows?
I'm just thinking if his code knowledge was a little fresher, mm-hmm. he could have used that to his advantage. Is what I'm saying. A lot of people think that code, when you meet code, that it takes longer. You're not able to cut costs. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you're trying to cut corners, and it's the total opposite. If you know the code, you're able to cut costs without cutting corners, mm-hmm. and that's kind of the beauty of this trade. Mm-hmm. As much as some people.
When people hate to use the term minimum standard, but in reality is if you meet the minimum of the code, then it's the minimally safest you can be, but it's compliant. You can go over and above, but if you follow the code, it's considered safe, as safe as it's going to get, right? But you can obviously go beyond code if you want. You can always go over it. A little 3 foot. If you want to put a strap in there, go for it. If you believe it does. But at the end of the day, you can go over and above if you want. But this is the minimum. Meet the code, and you're going to be okay. That part of it. As far as liability wise, you're definitely going to be okay. You met the minimum requirements. But there's some cases where you might venture above or over code. But that's a choice you get to make. And we certainly aren't going to make that for you, that type of thing. So, all right, Jay. Well, that's a great series. Hopefully all of you go back and watch 1 through 9. We just watched 10, and hopefully you get something out of it. Again, we'll see you in the next episode where we give more commentary on installations, and you just don't know what it may be. Commercial. Izzy's not here tonight. We might do commercial. You don't know what we're going to review. So till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. listening to Electrify with your hosts Paul Abernathy and Jay, the Basement King Grunberg.